Oh, hey. Hi, I'm live. It's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout and Outspoken, and I'm here today as promised with the 1560 Geneva Bible, Numbers 20. And it's a dramatic chapter. We've, you know, made our way through some chapters recently that were kind of more difficult, more arduous, heavy sledding, a lot of detail about how to sacrifice the red heifer. The children of Israel are still in the desert. They still haven't made it into the promised land. God is still very ambivalent about them because they keep resisting and rebelling and complaining and causing, disruptions in the relationship that God wants with them. But in this chapter, there is a climax. It's a sad one, but it definitely kind of shows the way and moves the narrative forward. So we'll go through that in the first hour, and then in the second hour, I'm going back to a feature I used to share with you all called Liberty Lifestyle. A lot of people really liked it, and we look at natural remedies, traditional remedies, forgotten remedies, and look at is there actual peer-reviewed scientific backing for these remedies of the past. And in the second hour, I'm going to share pinecone jam with you and talk about the incredible immune boosting effects of pine cones. Who knew? And who knew you could eat them? We'll get into that. And lastly, in the second hour, I'm going to invite the wonderful Brian O'Shea, my disclosure, my husband, as I always say, also someone with a very deep background in military tactics and strategy, and kind of informal or kind of I don't know what you'd call it, non-ordinary military tactics and strategy. And we're going to talk about the organizational activities in Minnesota and what the dangers are there, what the nature of the organization reveals about who the organizers are, what they want. And I'm going to share a little bit as a liberal. I'm still identifying myself as a liberal, but as someone, from the communities of the left originally, why this is, really a dangerous inflection point in American history, because, people are looking at how militarily effective these organizers and organizational strategies are. And I'm going to point out that they're actually very emotionally effective for the kinds of people and isolation and meaninglessness and loneliness and all the other difficult things that the left suffers from, often, not universally, but often. So I'm going to make the case that the quasi-military organization represented by these signal groups that have come to light is really one of the most exciting and socially validating things that members of the left have, experienced for a long, long, long time. And I'll talk about that. And Brian will share again his life experience with military tactics and strategy to explain to you, what are these organizers really doing? What's their goal, and what's the outcome, long term and short term. All right, let's get into the Geneva Bible, guys. And I'm going to share with you, as always, the 1560 Geneva Bible, and it's a slightly new format. You can actually open this in Adobe if you go to 1560genevabible.com, I believe. And that's really cool because you can download. It's in the public domain if you can't afford the, expensive, beautiful hardcover Geneva Bible. So this way you can see the beautiful, 16th century text print, and you can read along with me. And of course, I will read along for you. All right, chapter 20. And you remember they're still in the desert. They learned to sacrifice the red heifer. The last chapter was about God explaining, how contaminating death is and dead bodies and how to stay pure. All right, chapter 20. Very dramatic. Miriam dies. You remember Miriam is the sister of Aaron and Moshe. The people murmur, complain again. They they heave water out of the rock. Edom denies the Israelites passage. The deaths of Aaron, whose role, I think, Eleazar, his son, succeeds. All right, and you remember that that's not in the text, that's a subheadline. All right, then the children of Israel came with the whole congregation to the desert of Sin in the first month, and the people they stayed at Kadesh, where Miriam died and was buried there. I'm just going to make a note here that Miriam, who's a really important character, you remember she led the women in dancing and playing musical instruments when they had successfully crossed the Red Sea. She's a leader. She's wise. You remember also that she suffered from an infectious disease during the chapters on infectious disease and was banished outside the camp for a while, as I recall, for her insubordination. But she's back and she's passed away. And it's very interesting that her death is mentioned just in a very neutral way with just a few phrases, whereas the rebellion of the people is described in much more detail. But there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves against Moshe and against Aaron. And the people chode with Moshe and spoke, saying, "Would God we had perished when our brothers died before the Lord." And this should sound familiar to you because they periodically complain and say, "We wish we were still in slavery where we had enough to eat and drink." Then they would go on to say, "Why have you thus brought the congregation of the Lord unto this wilderness, which both we and our cattle should die there? Wherefore," meaning why, "now have you made us to come up from Egypt to bring us into this miserable place, which is no place of seed, nor figs, nor vines, nor pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink." So they're saying it's a desert, which it is. It's the wilderness of Sin. "Then Moshe and Aaron went from the assembly unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and fell upon their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto them. And the Lord spoke unto Moshe, saying, Take the rod and gather you and your brother Aaron, the congregation together, and speak you unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water, and you shall bring them water out of the rock. So you shall give the congregation and their beasts drink." Then Moshe took the rod from before the Lord as he had commanded him. And Moshe and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and Moshe said unto them, "Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring you water out of this rock?" And listen to the phrasing. "Then Moshe lift up his hand, and with his rod he struck the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly. So the congregation and their beasts drank. Again the Lord spoke unto Moshe and to Aaron, Because you believed me not to sanctify me in the presence of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them." So God's angry again. "This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them." And lariv is the infinitive, and it means to argue. Meriva, I argue, I get into an altercation, feminine. Okay. "Then Moshe sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom, saying, Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the travails that we have had, all the difficulties, how our fathers went down into Egypt, and we dwelt in Egypt a long time, where the Egyptians handled us evil and our fathers. But when we cried unto the Lord, he heard our voice and sent an angel and has brought us out of Egypt. And behold, we are in the city Kadesh, in your utmost border, in your furthermost border. I pray you that we may pass through your country. We will not go through the fields nor the vineyards, nor will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's way, meaning the highway, the main road, and neither turn unto the right hand nor to the left until we pass your borders. And Edom, meaning the king of Edom, answered him, you shall not pass by me, lest I come out against you with the sword. Then the children of Israel said unto him, we will go up by the highway, and if I and my cattle drink of your water, I will then pay for it. I will only, without any harm, go through on my feet. He answered again, you shall not go through. Then Edom came out against him with much people and with a mighty power. Thus Edom denied to give Israel passage through the country, wherefore Israel turned away from him. For that reason, they turned away. And when the children of Israel with all the congregation departed from Kadesh, they came unto Mount Hor. And the Lord spoke unto Moshe and to Aaron in the Mount Hor near the coast of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, meaning he's going to die, for he shall not enter into the land which I have given unto the children of Israel, because you disobeyed my commandment at the water of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son and bring them up into the Mount Hor, and cause Aaron to put off his garments and put them upon Eleazar his son, for Aaron shall be gathered to his fathers, and shall die there. And Moshe did as the Lord had commanded, and they went up into the Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. And Moshe put off, meaning took off Aaron's clothes and put them upon Eleazar his son. So Aaron died there in the top of the mount, and Moshe and Eleazar came down from off the mount. When all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, all the house of Israel wept for Aaron 30 days. And that's the end of that chapter in the Geneva Bible. So I'm going to call your attention to a couple of things before we go on to the Hebrew. I wonder if we're being shadow banned because there are very few people joining us. It is the middle of the day, but share this if you think it's valuable. Sometimes we do get dialed way down for mysterious reasons. This is an interesting and very political chapter because it definitely talks about a political, I would say, claim, negotiation, diplomacy that the children of Israel, or the leaders of the children of Israel, are definitely making with the tribes round about the land of Israel. So it, definitely has political resonance for the arguments of today. And I also wonder where Edom is, because it sounds like Edom is kind of near Gaza. So let's take a look at where Edom is. It's by the sea. It's in the wilderness. That's where Gaza is. So let's take a look. Where is Edom? I wonder if there's actually a political reason for us to be so shadow banned today, but I will forge ahead and let's see. Oh, interesting. No, I'm totally wrong. Edom was an ancient Iron Age kingdom located in the southern part of modern-day Jordan, extending into southern Israel, specifically in the mountainous region east of the Arava Valley, between the Dead Sea and the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba. And it includes Petra. So it's, I can show you the map. It is not near Gaza. It's across the other border, but it's definitely the southernmost tip of what is modern, the bottom of the boundary of modern Israel. So isn't that interesting? And so what the children of Israel were asking the king of Edom to do is, could they please go? They're in kind of the Sinai, they're in what's now modern Egypt, and they're asking, can we cross over sort of through the Edomite territory and come in via the east? into the promised land. And Edom is saying, no, basically, you cannot. And they say it very forcefully. So that's really interesting. I mean, where the children of Israel are now used to belong to modern Israel, and it was handed over in a peace negotiation to Egypt in the modern era. So it's definitely, what we're talking about definitely has political resonance, because it's very hard when you read this book to argue that, and I'm not taking a political position, but, here we are, 3,400 years ago with a negotiation between the leader of the children of Israel and the leader of another tribe, another people, basically engaging in attempted diplomacy to get to the promised land, to get to what is now the modern land of Israel. All right. Here are the things I want to say before I go into the Hebrew. One is, there's an echo here, and I know that you can probably hear it. The going up to the mountain in the sight of the whole congregation. That's happened before. It's happened several times before. It certainly happened very dramatically when Moshe received the tablets of the Ten Commandments, and then had to destroy them because the children of Israel were worshiping a golden calf. Total sacrilege, and then went back up to get replacement tablets. That was in the full sight of the children of Israel. But there's another echo. This is a father and his son going up a mountain. Does that ring a bell? Of course, it's Abraham and Isaac. It's a kind of an echo, an invocation. I think you're probably meant to remember Abraham and Isaac, and it's a similar theme. Will you obey what God is asking for by going up the mountain and doing what God tells you to do? Now, of course, at the last minute with Abraham and Isaac, God replaced the sacrificial child with the sacrificial ram. And we talked about what that means symbolically, the movement, I believe, from Baal worshippers who were literally sacrificing their children to gods, to this monotheistic Yahweh saying, you don't have to sacrifice your children. I don't want you to sacrifice your children. Please, take this ram instead. Sacrifice sheep and goats to me, not children. Life is sacred. Human life is sacred. There's that echo. But, notice that it's like another generation of fathers and sons carrying on a lineage, right? So Aaron has been the priest, very central figure in establishing the priesthood, establishing the lineage of Kohanim, the priestly, tribe, really, the ones with all the responsibilities with the temple of the tabernacle, and later the first and second temple. And it descends through the sons. It's patrilineal, as we say. Well, so a father and a son are going up again, but this time not to start a new lineage the way Abraham ultimately did through Isaac and Jacob, but a lineage through which God was very clear in the Hebrew Bible, and Christians should really pay attention. Your descendants will be as numberless as the sands of the sea, and through your descendants, all the people of the world will be blessed, which Christians who read the New Testament through the Old Testament understand or interpret that as referring to the fact that Yeshua descends from this lineage, right, through the tribe of Jesse, which I will never stop repeating because it's very important for us to remember that at times like this. They're, the same family, right? But also you've got a priest, a central priest, the first priest, Aaron, passing on, going up to the mountain, not again to start a lineage, but to die and to pass on the priestly lineage to his son in a very overt way, right? He takes off his clothes. Actually, Moshe takes off Aaron's clothes and puts them at God's direct instruction onto Elazar. And you remember, this is not just like his shirt and his jeans, right? It's not casual. You remember all those chapters in I believe, Exodus, that spelled out exactly what the priest wears, and the breastplate and the robes and the bells and the pomegranates, right? It's a very, very specific costume that the priest wears to signify his priestly status. And so that is what Elazar is being dressed in, is the authority of the priests of the tribe of the children of Israel, and the authority is passing on from his dad to him, implicitly, descending through his sons all the way to Jesus, right? That's in the future. It's a different set of books, but I can't stress enough, this is the same family lineage. And the dad is going up to the mountain to die. And this is also foreshadowing, because there's someone else who's going to go up to a mountain to die. And I don't want to spoiler alert, but that's, it's going to be Moshe as well, is going to go up to another mountain, equally tragically, to die without reaching the land of Israel. So these very pivotal, fundamental things happen in the full sight of the children of Israel, right? Like that, I think that's very strongly stressed here, that the mountain is something that everyone can see. The other thing I want you to remember and notice, and it's a theme throughout these readings, you guys, is you're not taught that human beings can see God. You're not. You are not taught that human beings can literally see and talk to God. But in these books, this is like the 5th or 6th time that God's visible presence is described. And it's not like just to Moses or just to Aaron, just to the intermediaries. No, the way the text is written, everyone can see the glory of God. There it is again. People are falling on their faces again, because the glory of God is so overwhelming that people, can die or kind of be overwhelmed if they experience the glory of God too directly. But it's so visible, everyone can see it, right? God is not something you just have to believe in. God is not something that you're just told about through an intermediary or a church or a synagogue. God's right there. Everyone can see God. There's God again. God comes in a cloud. God comes in a pillar of smoke. God comes in a pillar of fire, a burning bush. There's God again, And the last thing I want to call your attention to, again, speaking as a literary scholar or a student of literature, is and I've mentioned this before, but that word verisimilitude, right? The truth seeming of the story, the little details that make it feel not like myth, but like something really happened. And I can't swear what it was, but something really happened here. And the example of verisimilitude is this dialogue between Moshe and the king of Edom, where Moshe doesn't say, "Oh, mighty king, my people were taken to Egypt, and we were there for 400 years, and they made us slaves. And then, this may sound weird, but an angel came to get us, and, this monotheistic God that you don't believe in, but we do, got us out of Egypt. And here we are, and we want to cross over, and we won't eat your harvest or take too much of your water without paying for it, or trample your fields or damage your livestock. We'll stay on the highway. Just let us through." He's not saying that. He's saying, as we were in Egypt and we were treated very badly, and an angel brought us out. The reason I call your attention to this, again, as a student of literature, not as a biblical scholar, that sounds real to me, because it means that the narrative or the story of what happened to the children of Israel in Egypt and leaving Egypt has gotten around the region through the grapevine, that people have talked about it, right? That Moshe is assuming that the Edomites, who are in the region, right? They're kind of north of Egypt, but they're separated by the Sinai Desert, not by a lot of land, that they would have heard of this. They would have heard of the enslavement of the children of Israel. They would have heard probably of the 10 plagues reaching the Egyptians. And they would have heard of the escape of the children of Israel across the Red Sea, which is right near them. They're right at the tip of the Red Sea, as you saw from the map, the Sea of Reeds. And they I just love it. Moshe is talking about the angel as if this is a reasonable conversation to have with a king of another people. Well, this angel brought us out. There's no caveats. It's not like, this will be really weird, or there's no reason you should believe this, but an angel brought us out. No, so think about the dialogue that has come up before, in which Moshe referenced the metaphysical events, or even said to God, don't wipe these people out because the surrounding tribes will think you're not a miraculous God, that you are not capable of doing everything. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the dialogue, not just here, but earlier, shows that whatever miraculous stuff is going on with the movement of this tribe out of Egypt into the Sinai Desert and northward, other people have heard about it and talked about it, and are not rejecting the possibility that there is really a powerful God aligned with the children of Israel. Whatever's going on, they may not believe it, they may not be on board with it, but people are talking about the children of Israel having a metaphysical power accompanying them, or patronizing them. I guess especially in the terms of tribes at that time, like a patron god, right? So that really, really interests me. Now, they're not talking about it enough for the king of Edom to allow them to go through. Or maybe the king of Edom does believe the gossip about how powerfully this God, who's ever heard of a monotheistic God, right, is accompanying the children of Israel, and he doesn't want to bring whatever that is into his own borders. He's like, no, thank you. Go around, take a detour. He doesn't attack them, but he does prevent them with a show of force from even walking into the highway, into his kingdom, and taking the eastern route into the land of Israel. So to me, that is really, 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 really interesting. Again, another little piece, not so little, to me, as a journalist, right? You look at how people talk about things. To me, those incidental, like offhand remarks of Moshe's, well, I'm sure you've heard that, an angel accompanied us. It's like, I don't know what's going on with you guys, but something really weird is going on, and don't come into the land of Edom. It's fascinating to me because again, it doesn't sound mythological. It sounds just narrative, like real people having a real conversation. And again, it sounds like gossip had preceded the children of Israel. So let's now go quickly, because we're running low on time, to the Hebrew. Bamidbar, remember, it's not numbers in Hebrew, it's in the desert, Bamidbar. And let's go ahead. V'yavou b'nei Israel, and they came, the children of Israel, kol ha'edah, the whole congregation, midbar Tzin, to the desert of Tzin, b'chodesh harishon, in the first month, vayeshev ha'am beKadesh, and the people settled in Kadesh. Kadesh is the city. V'tamat sham Miriam, and she died there, Miriam. V'tikaver sham, and she was buried there. V'lo hayamayim la'edah, and there was no water to the congregation. V'yakahalu al Moshe ve'al Aharon, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron. And a kahal is a congregation, so they kind of gathered around. Vayerev ha'am, and I said, lariv is to argue, and argued the people, im Moshe, with Moses, v'yomru lemor, and they said, saying, velu gav'anu bi gva achenu lifnei Adonai, if only we had died with the death of our brothers before the Lord. Velama hevetem et kehal, and why have you brought, you plural, the congregation of the Lord, Adonai, el hamidbar hazeh, toward this desert, lamut sham anachnu be'irenu, to die there, we and our livestock. Velama helitunu, and why did you take us out? Literally, lift us up out. Mimitzrayim, from Egypt. Lehaviotanu el hamakom, to bring us to the place. Hara hazeh, the evil this. Lo mekom zerad, not a place of seed. U te'ana, or figs. Vegefen, or grapevines or grapes, literally, verimon, and pomegranates, umayim, and water, ein lishtot, there is none to drink. It's so poetic. V'yavo Moshe ve'Aaron, and Moses and Aaron moved mifnei hakahal, from away of the face of the congregation, el petach ohel, to the opening of the tent, moed, of meeting, vayiplu al pneihem, and they fell on their faces, v'yera kavod Adonai alehem, and they saw. Now, kavod Adonai, we've talked about this word kavod, the glory of God, also the weight and heaviness of God. Kaved is heavy. Alehem, on them. They saw the glory, the honor. It also means honor, the weight of God on them. Isn't it, when you hear like all three meanings in the Hebrew, isn't it so much more meaningful? V'yidaber Adonai el Moshe le'emor. You know what that means. The Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, Kach et hamateh, take the staff, the stick, vehakhel et ha'edah, and assemble. And that word is like thematic in this chapter. Hakhel is the verb for to assemble. So assemble the edah, the congregation. Ata, you, ve'Aaron, and Aharon achicha, your brother, udbartem el hasela, and speak, plural, to the rock, le'enehem, to their eyes, literally, meaning in their presence. Venatan meimav, and give its water. Vehotzeta lahem maim, and you'll take out of it for them water. Min hasela, from inside the rock, literally. Vehishkita et ha'edah ve'et be'iram, and you'll lashkot, you'll kind of satisfy with water. There's not really an exact word for it in English, to fulfill someone with water, right? To give them enough water for them to be satisfied. You'll bring forth water from the rock and give the congregation their livestock to drink. Vayikach Moshe et hamateh, and took Moses the staff, milifnei Adonai ke'asher tzivuhu, from the face of God as he had commanded, meaning as God had commanded. Hilu, that word again, and assembled Moshe ve'Aaron et hakahal, same root, Moshe and Aaron, the assembly, el pnei ha-salah, toward the face of the rock, in front of the rock, ve'yomar lehem shim'una, and said to them, listen, please. That na is an intensifier, it means please. Shim'una, listen, hear, please. Hamorim, hamin hasela, you rebels, from inside this rock, hazeh, this, notzi lachem mayim, we will take out for you water. Pay attention to that wording. They're not saying God will take it out. They're saying we will take out water, you rebels. Vayarem, and raised up Moshe et yado, Moses his hand, veyach et hasela, and he struck the rock, b'matehu, with his staff, pa'amayim, 2 times, vayitzu mayim rabim, and there went out many waters, v'tisht ha'edah be'iram, and the congregation and their livestock drank. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, and God said to Moses, ve'el Aaron, and to Aaron, Ya'an lo he'emantem, since you did not, now this word is important, leha'amin means to believe, but also to have faith, and to trust. And all those, actually Brian and I were talking about this the other day, all of those meanings are in the root emunah, is the noun. Lo he'emantim, you didn't believe. It's translated, you didn't have faith in me, but it's literally, you didn't believe in me, be in me. Lehakdisheni, to sanctify me, le'enei bnei Israel, to the eyes of the children of Israel. Lachen lo taviu, for this reason you won't come, you won't bring et hakahal hazeh, this assembly, el haaretz asher natati lachem, to the land which I have given them. Very strong language from God. I would say the strongest yet. He's promised and promised and promised this land to Moshe and Aaron, and for the last time, Moshe and Aaron have, not done what he asked. And so he's saying, that's why you're not coming into the Holy Land. Hema me meriva, these are the waters of dispute, lariv, meriva, argument, asher ravu b'nei Israel, where the children of Israel argued, et Adonai, with God, v'kadesh bam, and he was sanctified through them. And it's not clear if that's sanctified. I think it means sanctified through these waters. V'yishlach Moshe malachim, and Moses sent messengers, Mekadesh el Melech Edom, from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Ko amar, thus he said, Achicha Israel, your brother Israel, ataya data et kol hatla'a, you know all the difficulty, asher matzatnu, which we found, which has befallen us. Vayerdu avotenu, they went down, our fathers, Mitzrayma, toward Egypt. And when you've got Mitzrayma, or, ending in that it's like a geographical direction, right? And they descended, our fathers, toward Egypt. Vegeshev, Veneshev b'Mitzrayim, and we settled in Egypt, Yamim Rabim, many days, V'yar'u lanu Mitzrayim lavotenu, and they mistreated us, they were evil to us, Egypt, to our fathers, our forefathers. V'nitzak el Adonai, and we shouted toward God, V'yishma kolenu, and he heard our voices, V'yishlach malach, and this is the trippy part, and he sent an angel. And by the way, the poetry, you won't believe it. A few lines back, line 14, Moses sent messengers. Listen, V'yishlach Moshe malachim, and sent Moses malachim, messengers. All right, now listen to 2 lines later. V'nitzak, and we shouted toward God, El Adonai, V'yishma kolenu, and he heard our voices, V'yishlach, and he sent malach. So the word malach means a messenger and an angel. It's the exact same word in line 14 and in line 16. So God sent a messenger, right? Which is an angel. Same word and same phrase, to send a messenger. Isn't that incredible? But totally different context. V'yishlach malach, he sent an angel, v'yotz'enu, and they extracted us, they took us out, Mitzrayim, of Egypt, v'hine anachnu beKadesh, and here we are in Kadesh, ir katzeh gvulecha, a city on the edge of your border, literally your edge. And this is why I say this chapter, maybe why I'm being dialed down so much, really is a diplomacy chapter where a head of state is talking to another head of state saying, we're at your border, let's make a negotiation. Na'abra na, again, that please, let us pass, please, be'artsecha, in your land, lo na'avor besadeh, we won't pass in a field, uvecherem, or a vineyard, velo nishte me be'er, and we won't drink the waters of a well, derech hamelech nelech, the way of the king, like the king's highway, will go. Lo nite yamin usmol, we won't turn right or left, ad asher na'avor gvulecha, until we have passed through, literally past your boundaries, passed through your territory. Vayomer elav Edom, and Edom, meaning the king of Edom, said to him, Lo ta'avor, don't cross, be in me, pen becherev etze lekratecha, lest I go out to you with a sword. Vayomru elav bnei Israel, and they said to him, the children of Israel, bemisla, bemesila naale, we will keep the highway. Ve'im mimecha nishte, and if we drink from your waters, ani umeknai venatati michram rak ein davar beraglai e'evora. If we drink your water, either I or my cattle will pay its price. It's really nothing I will pass through on foot. Vayomer lo, but he said, lo ta'avor, don't pass. Vayitze Edom, and Edom went out, likrato, toward them, be'am kaved, with a people heavy, and that's that same word, kavod, honor, radiance, glory, but in this case, a heavy people, a lot of people, uviyad chazaka, and with a strong hand, meaning a lot of people were standing by. Yemaen Edom, and Edom refused niton et Israel, to allow, literally to give Israel, avor, passage, crossing, bigvulo, across his border, vayet Israel me'alav. So Israel turned away from him. Vayis'u mikadesh, and they traveled, literally they carried themselves, right? From Kadesh, vayavo bnei Israel kol ha'eda, and they came, the children of Israel, all the congregation, hor hahar, to the mountain or the hill of Hor. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe vel Aharon, and God said to Moses and Aaron, I know you can understand that by now, Behor hahar, and you hear the poetry, in Hor, the mountain, Hor is the name of the mountain, Har means mountain, al gvul eretz Edom lemor, on the border of the land of Edom, saying, Ya'asef Aharon el amav, he will be collected, Aaron, toward his people, ki lo yavo el haaretz asher natati, because he won't come to the country which I gave livnei Israel, to the children of Israel, al asher mritam, because you defied, et pi, my mouth, literally my word, lemei meriva, at the waters of dispute. Kach et Aaron ve'et Elazar, take Aaron and Elazar, bno, his son, ve'ha'alotam hor hahar, and ascend ha'al, right, raise them up, otam, them, hor hahar, to the mountain of Hor. And you hear the echo, the beautiful music. Ve'hafshet, meaning literally make naked, strip. Et Aharon, Aaron, et bigdav, his clothing, vehalbashtam, and dress them, et Elazar, on Elazar, bno, his son, ve'aharon yasef umet sham, and Aaron shall be gathered, meaning gathered to his people, and will die there. I think it's really beautiful that at this time, someone will die is described as his being collected to his people or collected to his fathers. It does definitely imply an afterlife, right? V'ya'as Moshe, and did Moses ke'asher tziva Adonai, as God commanded. V'ya'alu el Hor hahar, and they went up toward the mountain of Hor, le'enei kol ha'eda, again in front of the eyes of all the congregation. Shet, and stripped Moshe et Aaron, Moses, Aaron, et bigadav, his clothing, ve'yalbash otam, and he dressed them, et Elazar, on Elazar, bno, his son, ve'yamat, and he died, Aharon sham, Aaron there, berosh hahar, at the literally the head, to the top of the mountain, ve'yared Moshe, and Moses came down, ve'elazar min ha'ahar. That's so sad. And descended Moses and Elazar from the mountain, and it's so tragic because you recognize it's just 3 went up and 2 came down. V'yir'u kol ha'eda, the whole congregation saw, ki gava Aaron, that Aaron had died. V'yivku et Aaron, and they wept for Aaron. Shloshim yom, 30 days, kol beit Israel, the whole house of Israel. Oh, so sad. All right. So That's the Hebrew. It's surprising, right? The logic isn't obvious. Why is God so mad? And I can tell you that there's some really interesting Torah exegesis that I read before this, actually out of the University of Washington. I think it's called Lexio. And they made a good point that Moshe and Aaron didn't do exactly what God had commanded. God had said, go to the rock and speak to it. But they didn't go to the rock and speak to it, right? They went to the rock and struck it. And they were clearly angry. They said, okay, you rebels, you think we can't get you water? We can get you water. Whack, right? And then the water poured out of the rock and everyone drank. And it was a miracle. But they lost their temper, and they, again, didn't trust that God had his own way of doing it. And so they did a very human kind of childish thing. They whacked the rock. And I can see why, right? If you're afraid God isn't going to bring water out of the rock because maybe God's not that strong, or you're hallucinating or imagining something, you might whack the rock, with your stick in frustration or to create drama, or because you're sick of these people complaining all the time. Very human, but it's not what God asked them to do. And what God had planned was for them to speak to the rock, and then water would gush out of it. And God is trying to create miracles to demonstrate his powers so that people will stop rebelling against him and will trust him and do his mitzvot, to do his commandments, do as he commands them. And it's less impactful when, Aaron and Moses are just whacking the rock. The other thing is their wording. They don't say God is going to bring water out of this rock. They say we'll show you, essentially, we're bringing water out of this rock. And the Torah exegesis, which makes a lot of sense to me, says, they're kind of taking credit as humans, God's miracle, and that, God's intention again was to sanctify himself, to reveal his holiness and his powers, of his miraculous powers, to the children of Israel for a purpose, not just because he's, arrogant and narcissistic. He's not, but so that they'll stop rebelling against him and just do what he's asking, which is the whole story, practically. Love me, align with me. It's the whole center of the narrative up till now. And by having this kind of temper tantrum and forgetting to say it's God and instead saying it's us, which is tempting if you've got a rebellious people in the middle of the desert, right? You've got to get them in line, rather than asking them again to trust this kind of mysterious force that sometimes they can see and sometimes they can't and isn't human. It's tempting to say, look, we're powerful. Look at this whack. We did this. So shut up or get in line or help us out, right? Very human, but it's not what God wanted. So God is saying, okay, you're done, Aaron. You're going to be collected to your fathers. You're going to die on the top of the mountain of Hor. And, Elazar, your son, is going to take over, and you're not going to see the land of Israel. And it's not punishment. It's just, and it's happened a few times before, people show themselves not capable to execute God's actual will. So God has a big mission. He's trying to get everyone to the land of Israel so he can, bless them, bring his laws to the world. And if you're Christian, create the lineage and the tradition that allows Yeshua to appear centuries later and bring the essence of this message to the whole world, Jewish and non-Jewish. But he's kind of moving people out of the way who can't be part of it. And he's done that before, whether it was the earth swallowing people up the last time they rebelled, remember, or whether it was at the foot of Mount Sinai, after the golden calf, when he divided the people into those who were just, struck down and those who could carry on with him. Or remember when he divided the fighting men according to how they went down to the river, some carried on and some were kind of discarded. The reason I've started taking God a lot more seriously is that is a theme. Like, he literally chooses some to keep going and lets others go. And you could say that's really mean, but we're not God. And, we didn't create ourselves. And all of this is a gift. So you can't really say, what are you doing, letting Aaron die or letting those people get swallowed up. It's God's story, and we can keep going with his story if we align with him. And it's that simple. Like, I'm sorry to be a downer, but it's kind of serious, and it's better to know than not know, I think. It really is, because then you don't make a mistake. You don't want to be, and Jesus says a lot of these parables eventually, the sheep and the goats, or the chaff and the wheats, and there's a lot of separating of God's people from not God's people in in these texts and in the New Testament. Better to know, like, why not know and try to be, the people who get to carry on with this story. I don't know what happens to the people who don't get to carry on with this story. God's merciful. I'm sure something reasonable happens to them, but we don't know in this story what happened to the people who got swallowed up in the earth, or what happened to the people who, what happened to Aaron. He doesn't get to see the land of Israel, but he's being gathered to his fathers. You want to be on the right side of Yahweh's, commandments is a clear takeaway from this story. All right, let's move on to the last one, which is the Revised Standard Version. Here we are, the waters of Meribah, and let's see what happens there. And we're just going to skim it. They came into the wilderness of Tzin, and there was no water for the congregation. Now, this is an interesting word. That the Revised Standard Version tends always to translate things in a very, theological way, even when it's not there in the original text. And it's an assembly, but it's not a congregation, right? And congregation really implies in a church kind of thing. So that's not really, I wouldn't say that congregation is accurate. The people contended with Moses and said, well, again, I wouldn't say that's so accurate. It's a lot stronger than contended, right? Like, what does contended even mean? It's an archaic word we don't use anymore. It's really argued or, fought, lariv. If you're having an argument with your best friend, you would say, ravtita. I had an argument with her. We're not speaking. So they've softened it. Why have you made us come up out of Egypt? And fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord said to Moses, take the rod and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them. Oh God, we don't need that. And so that's reasonably translated. And then, all the adversity that has befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we dwelt in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians dealt harshly with us and our fathers. And when we cried to the Lord, literally when we shouted to God, he heard our voices and sent an angel and brought us forth out of Egypt. And here we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your territory. That's all reasonably translated. And they journeyed from Kadesh, and the people of Israel, the whole assembly, came to Mount Hor. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to the people of Israel, because you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son and bring them up to Mount Hor. Strip Aaron of his garments, put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall be gathered to his people, literally shall be gathered, and shall die there. Moses did as the Lord commanded and went up to Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, all the house of Israel wept for Aaron. So 30 days. So the other thing there's no, hugely surprising mistranslations there. The other thing to notice, you guys, is like, how sad is this? When Aaron is going up to the mountain, he knows he's going to die. And when Moshe, his brother, takes him and his nephew, Eleazar, up to the mountain, he knows he's going to be saying goodbye to his brother and that his brother is going to die. And Eleazar knows that his father is going to die. So this is just either an incredibly tragic journey or I would say, and from a human perspective, and it's an incredibly moving example of three people showing incredible faith and trust, belief, emunah, in God, beyond human capabilities to understand. Like, they know they're going to lose Abram at the top of the mountain. He's not coming down with them. They go up anyway. Well, A, you could say they don't have a choice, but B, it sounds like they really like Abraham and Isaac. They really trust God. Yes, Aaron is going to be gathered to his forebears, so that definitely implies, going home to ancestors in another place, right? There have been scholars who say that this stage of the worship of Yahweh didn't really have a developed idea of an afterlife. And certainly Judaism doesn't have the same idea of an afterlife as Roman Catholicism does, for instance. Heaven and hell and purgatory, those are, less purgatory, not at all, but even heaven and Sheol, which is sort of a shadowy place like hell, like Greek hell, not like Catholic hell, less developed in Judaism, even in this period, than it would be later in Christianity. But still, Aaron is being gathered into an afterlife of some kind, and very movingly, Eleazar and Aaron and Moshe are trusting whatever's happening. They made a mistake, but in their last act in Aaron's life, they're aligning with exactly what God wants. I just think that's really moving. Could you do that? I don't know if I could do that. My goodness. So someone's saying nice things, whatever this is, a teaching, an analogy, a podcast. I'm enjoying. It is awesome. May God bless you, Dr. Naomi. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I don't know what it is. Those are all good options. A teaching, a podcast, and analysis, all of those. Just sharing, my thoughts. But what we do every episode of this series is we look at the 1560 Geneva Bible, the Founders Bible, the Shakespeare's Bible, Jefferson's Bible, very faithful translation from the Hebrew. We compare it with the Hebrew, and we compare that with a modern version, the Revised Standard Version. Let's see. Does Israel these days continue to strike rocks around them rather than speak to them? That's a profound question. That's our friend Barry Atkinson. I believe you're speaking metaphorically. Maybe. I don't think Israel is any better or worse than any other country. In some ways, better than some countries. You could argue in some ways worse than some countries, but you could make that case. I mean, I think God sets a very high bar. Does America strike rocks instead of speaking to them? But that's very beautifully put, Barry. I love it. Let's see what other people are saying. Gabriel Thunberg says, thanks, Naomi. I will try to listen to this in its entirety. It is great to know a person with the same genetic memories encoded in our cells. Catch you later. By the way, In a Bookshop was an opus written by the other Naomi. Guys, I never read it because life's too short. So we can just move on. James says, numbers of the sand of the sea, because all the Christian kingdoms we see throughout history, prophecy was fulfilled, Israel scattered, 70 AD, just as Jesus warned in Matthew. Well, that's true. Am I missing a previous comment? No. God said you'll be numbered like the sand of the sea. And indeed, what James is saying is 100% correct, which is pretty trippy if you wonder whether this is real or not. And indeed, God said, all the nations of the world will be blessed through you. Your descendants will be like the sands of the sea. And sure enough, in 70 AD, just as Jesus foretold, the temple was destroyed. Not one stone was left upon another, exactly as Jesus said. And indeed, Judea was conquered, and the Jews were scattered all over the known world at that time and remained scattered until 1948, when they were gathered up to the Holy Land again, also fulfilling scripture, by the way. And I'm not trying to make any geopolitical claims there. It's complicated enough geopolitically, but everything that God said would happen 3,400 years ago did happen. And through Yeshua, as I keep saying, a descendant of these people, this family, non-Jews as well as Jews were blessed. And arguably, metaphorically, when God said, I will bless you and your descendants will be like the stars in the sky and the sands of the sea, meaning very numerous, he was talking about the non-Jews as well as the Jews that were, blessed with the commandments of Yahweh through Yeshua and through the early church. So that is the end of this chapter. Very moving, exciting chapter. Things are finally happening. You can't say they're not happening. They are really, really, really happening. It's been a while, but the children of Israel are on the move. They're right at the border of the Holy Land. So things are definitely getting very exciting. I want to thank our sponsor before I go on to the next hour of our commentary, where again I will bring you Brian O'Shea and his knowledge of militias and eating pine cones. Why should we eat pine cones? But let me thank our sponsor. What do 3 billionaires, 4 major banks, and a legendary 72-year-old investor all have in common? They're all making the same shocking prediction. Gold is headed for $10,000 an ounce or more. Goldman Sachs says gold will surge 20%. JP Morgan says 25%. And one respected economist now believes the US government could deliberately raise gold's official price to help pay off the national debt. And the world's wealthiest players are already making their moves. Now you can see exactly what they are seeing, and you can do it for free. Our friends at American Alternative Assets, a wonderful company, just released a powerful new report, The Surprising Case for $10,000 Gold. It breaks down the hidden signals in the market, the central bank gold buying spree now underway, and the way that smart Americans are protecting their retirement with gold right now. So go to cloutgold.com to download this document for free, or call 855-803-GOLD. Again, that's 855-803-GOLD. And don't wait. The window to get in on this is closing fast. And when I say that, I always add my own observation and Brian's, which is, Brian and I started talking about investing in gold 5 years ago, almost, when we first found out it was possible, which I hadn't even known. And we just didn't bother. And if we had at that time, we would have nearly quintupled our investment. So we're not making the same mistake again. We are really happy to be partnered with American Alternative Assets and benefiting from their wisdom. So you can too. Go to cloutgold.com, 855-803-GOLD. A wonderful, reputable company. All right, guys, let's bring on Brian O'Shea. If you're ready, sweetheart. He needs a few minutes, and that works just fine because I have a lot to tell you about pine cones. All right, bit of a pivot, but not terribly much. This is our second hour now of the podcast. We're moving from the Old Testament to the current moment. I have a toasted Udi's crumpet. I like gluten-free crumpets because I don't like gluten. Doesn't agree with me. It's got a little bit of butter on it. Here's another toasted Udi's crumpet. I put these in the air fryer. These are not, hideously kind of bad. They're pretty okay. They're about 170 calories, about 17 grams of carbs for each half. So it's just to know if they're counting carbs or counting calories, but a wonderful kind of basis for a treat, not very unhealthy at all, kind of healthy. So what is this? This is from Mom Cooks Jam brand. Again, not a sponsor, so no conflict of interest. I always disclose when we have a sponsor. And it's handmade pine cone jam. And I thought that was really weird when I saw an ad for it. But look inside. Those are literally tiny pine cones. I think this is so adorable. I'm going to try to not spill pine cone jam on my computer, but it is miniature pine cones in there. And I'm going to hold one up. These are like, I don't know, half an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, tiny, tiny, tender pine cones. It's a pine cone. Now watch this. I just ate a pine cone. Oh my God. It tastes like a pine cone. And it's actually, kind of soft and chewy and edible in the middle. Why did I eat a pine cone? Well, you may ask. When I was growing up, and I'm 63, which always trips me out when I say it, so I just better say it just to, think about it. When I was growing up in the 70s, there was a famous TV ad, and you know what I'm going to say if anyone is of my generation or older. Ever eat a pine cone? Many parts are edible. And that was a naturalist named Ewell Gibbons. I don't remember what he was advertising. Someone can look it up on the interwebs, but it was kind of this kitsch, campy, famous advertisement. So I'd heard that, you can eat pine cones. What sparked my interest in this? I was clearing out our garage. And I had stacks and stacks, piles of boxes from a move that I've been putting off, boxes of papers, boxes of clothes, boxes of dishes. And as I was moving all of these boxes in this garage that I have not dared to go into for a long time, I heard squeaking, and I saw piles and piles and piles of pine cones, like mountains, little mountains of pine cones, not these tiny ones, big, mature, robust pine cones, about 7 or 8 inches each. But some animal had brought literally mountains, like a warehouse, like our garage had turned into a pine cone warehouse. And I was like surprised because I didn't know that pine cones were food. And, clearly these were squirrels or mice. And they dragged in all these pine cones as their store of food to eat for winter. So that reminded me that many parts of a pine cone are edible. And also, why were they eating the pine cones, right? And so, that weird thing happens. I'm sure you've experienced it where you're thinking about something and you'll get an ad in your social media feed. It's creepy. Who knows what that technology is? Maybe I talked about it and, Siri heard or whatever. But an ad for this pine cone jam appeared in my feed. And the ingredients are green pine cones, so tiny, fresh buds, really, water, sugar, and a pinch of love. And it's made in Ukraine. That's interesting. So it's some sort of, what is the word? Traditional remedy in Ukraine. So I decided, so then I tried it and I thought, well, this is going to be disgusting. But I also saw really good reviews online. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. And people being very surprised that it, actually looked and tasted pretty great. So can you see that? I don't want to drop food on my computer, but you're literally piling tiny pine cones onto this muffin. Why would one do that? It turns out that, in fact, pine cones are unbelievably, this is one of those like unbelievable liberty lifestyle revelations. Just like my last video in which I looked at hibiscus, pomegranate, ginger, garlic, and nasal rinses as hidden, forgotten, categorical solutions, plus mega vitamin C for the common cold and flu, with abundant peer-reviewed studies showing how effective those remedies are in literally making it impossible for flu viruses to replicate. In the case of pomegranates, saving half the mice from death from flu. In the case of, I believe the vitamin C, just crazy effective, right? By the same token, there is masses of information online in PubMed, which is the gold standard for peer-reviewed scientific articles about the health benefits of pine cones. And people have been making pine jam forever and using pine needles, including in pine needle tea, pine resin, pine products in herbal remedies and natural medicine remedies for centuries. So let's just look at one. It's a PubMed article called an orally active immune adjuvant prepared from the cones, excuse me, of Pinus sylvestris enhances the proliferative phase of a primary T cell response. So you remember that T cells are critical to immune response, to mounting a strong, effective immune response. And this is from the journal BMC Complementary Alternative Medicine, 2014, May. As a note, a lot of the incredibly important peer-reviewed studies about herbal and traditional remedies that show effectiveness stop in about 2015, 2016. They're from before then. And I think that actually one of the oncology doctors that I interviewed yesterday explained why this is, since you can't patent drugs made from pine cones or hibiscus or dandelion or ginger, any of these natural remedies, but it costs like $1 billion or many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to do clinical trials to get FDA approved. People just gave up, studying natural remedies because they would never get their money back. That was what he explained. So these authors, William Bradley, Catherine Holm, and Akiko Tanaka, said that this is kind of a 2 or 3.0 article. And they said, we've previously demonstrated that an alkaline extract of shredded pine cones yields a polyphenol propanoid polysaccharide complex, PPC, that functions as an orally active immune adjuvant. Specifically, oral PPC can boost the number of antigen-specific memory CD8 plus T cells generated in response to a variety of vaccine types, DNA, protein, and dendritic cell, and bias the response towards one that is predominantly a T helper 1 type. So as I understand it, they're saying that they've already shown that if you take an alkaline extract of shredded pine cones, it yields a substance that helps T cells mount an immune response subsequent to mammals being injected with different kinds of vaccines, thus making essentially the vaccines more effective, all right, because they depend on an immune response. So this article is saying they've already shown that T cell effectiveness is boosted by pine cone extract. Their method, an immune response, was initiated by intraperitoneal injection of mice. That sounds very uncomfortable. With Staphylococcus enterotoxin B, so staph, right? Terrible infection, horrible. A group of mice received PPC, this pine extract, by gavage 3 times per day on days 0 and 1. The draining lymph nodes were analyzed post-injection for the numbers of reactive T cells, cytokine production, and generation of reactive oxygen species and apoptosis, which I think is the cell death results. In this study, we examined whether the ability of PPC, this pine extract, to boost a T cell response is due to an effect on the proliferative or contraction phases or both of the primary response. So what is it about the immune response that is going on here? And what they conclude is that PPC, this pine extract, could potentially be utilized to enhance the T cell response generated by a variety of vaccines designed to target a cellular response. So they're saying basically pine extract makes the immune response initiated by various vaccines more effective. They go all the way back to Pedanius Dioscorides, 40 to 90 CE, an ancient Greek physician, pharmacologist, and botanist who practiced in ancient Rome. In about 8065, after much direct observation of plants in their native habitats, he wrote De Materia Medica, a precursor to all modern pharmacopoeias, compendia of pharmacological substances. And it's one of the most influential herbal books in history. Within the Materia Medica, Dioscorides describes using extract of pine cones to treat kidney and digestive ailments and to apply to the skin to treat a disease that appears to have been psoriasis. Not only that, but for much of the last century, they say, the Japanese inhabitants of the island of Kyushu have also known about the medicinal properties of pine cone extract. They've used an aqueous extract, a tea, prepared from pine cones to treat illnesses ranging from infectious disease to cancer, because of the indigenous beliefs that the pine cone tea was able to treat such a wide variety of illnesses. It appeared to us that the effects of the extract were very likely being mediated through the immune system. So they're going into the possibility that, in fact, this folk remedy, this pinecone tea used in Japan, is actually having a positive effect on the immune system. And they conclude with the continual accumulation of anecdotal reports suggesting the use of PPC, pinecone extract, along with traditional anti-cancer therapy, somehow enhances the ability to mount an effective anti-cancer response. We're motivated to better understand pinecone extract's mechanism of action. And they basically hypothesize what it is, that it has to do with secondary T cell response. And that basically it makes the T cells more effective. So they talk about the poor mice, and that they were given a standard diet, and then they gave the mice powdered pine cone extract derived from Scotch pine, and the pine cones were washed extensively in deionized water and then shredded. The pine cone shreds were then loaded into a stainless steel reaction vessel and extracted with water, so they had a pine cone extract. The liquid was tested extensively. It didn't contain herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals, microorganisms. It was spray dried to form a dark brown, odorless, stable powder. So they created a pine cone extract powder from Scotch pines. Then they suspended that in sterile water, and they give the formula, and then they gave it to the mice. On day 0, 3 mice each were injected in their peritoneum, which sounds horribly unpleasant, with staph. God, I'd hate to be a lab mouse. And then 3 mice in the naive group were injected with a certain amount, and the mice in the PPC group, so they had a control and a test group, which is standard in a real study. The mice in the PPC group were gavaged with a certain amount of this extract 3 times a day for a total of 6 doses. At 48 or 96 hours post-immunization, the mice were euthanized, so sad, by CO2 inhalation. Then they took the lymph nodes from each mouse and pooled them and used them in an assay. They kind of analyzed the lymph cells. This is really gross, but I guess it's science. The set of inguinal lymph nodes from each mouse is pooled and used in each assay. The number of cell subsets per lymph node was obtained. And what did they find? They found that for each mouse, they then put them in a centrifuge. They did a lot of things, and detection of apoptosis. And then they stained them. The cells were incubated at room temperature for 10 minutes, then washed, suspended a binding buffer, then analyzed. All right. So isolated lymph node cells were exposed to another process. It's very elaborate. And then what do they find? Anti-apoptosis-related protein. Analysis of gene expression. Total RNA was isolated from the lymph node cells and reverse transcribed. Statistical analysis. Finally, results. Oral delivery of PPC, the pinecone extract, enhances the number of CD4 and CD8 T cells in the lymph nodes of mice during the primary response to immunization. So the bottom line is the mice's lymph nodes, treated in abundant different ways, showed conclusively that their immune response was stronger upon receiving the extract of pine. And there you can see, I think you can see, yes, you can, the actual map showing the boosted effector T cells, right? And so this is the antigen, and the same antigen, these are the naive T cells. So basically you can see a measurable bump in how robust the T cells are after these poor little mice get the pine cone extract. So what do you do with that? And they tease out how it works. And how it makes, really all vaccines that they tested more effective. And you can see many, many charts to this effect, dramatic difference. So it's a very detailed study. So the report by Burroughs et al. Describes the ability of orally administered PPC to consistently double the number of antigen-specific T cells detected during secondary T cell responses in mice that had been immunized with either a DNA, protein, or dendritic cell vaccine. So basically, they're saying that it makes 3 kinds of vaccines more effective. So, and then you have all of these references, all right? So these are not the first people to look at pine cone extract and its effect on the immune system. All these other peer-reviewed articles have looked at it. So why am I bringing all of this up? This is not news. There are many, many, many studies now that show pine cone extract boosts T cell response, which has an impact on cancer. It has an impact on autoimmune disorders, on asthma, on inflammatory disorders, all of these, how quickly you get over cold and flu. I mean, your immune system is everything. Now, people are given immunizations every year, as you know. Are they given pine cone extract? And it can be administered in various easy ways. It sounds like nasally. It sounds like you can administer it orally. You can administer it in tea. No, they're not. No one's ever heard of it, right? Except people who pour through PubMed or who look at traditional remedies the way I love to do. So there you have it, guys. I could give you dozens and dozens of other peer-reviewed studies showing the effectiveness of pine cones as an immune booster. But instead, I just really encourage you to, go gather some pine cone tea or order it from a reputable supplier. I like Mountain Rose Herb or iherb.com. Those are good. None of these are, come on, sweetheart, there's room. None of those are sponsors. There's no conflict of interest. I'm making room for the wonderful Brian O'Shea, our favorite special guest out of all the special guests. And don't take my word for it. Take that pine cone tea or pine cone extract and see if you feel better or if you recover more quickly from cold and flu. Let's get you in the shot. And that's what I wanted to bring you in Liberty Lifestyle today. And Loki always likes to sit on our laps when, here he is, you can have him. Are you reaching out for him?
Yeah, he's reaching out for me.
He is. It's okay. Loki loves Brian most. I've accepted it. And here, honey, you can have Loki. Loki loves me too, but I'm not the alpha of the pack, so that's okay. Who's the alpha?
I think it's a bear outside that keeps beating me at every battle.
Well, darling, I wanted to invite you here onto this second hour of our podcast to talk about the militias in, is this weird?
There's a jar of Ukrainian pine cones. What is that?
Yes, baby. Well, I just did half an hour on the Ukrainian pine cones, sweetheart.
Gotcha.
It's an herbal remedy. Do you want to taste it?
No, thank you.
It's actually great.
I'll taste it off camera in case I don't like it.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't want to offend whoever sent it to you.
No, I ordered it myself.
Well, thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
We're here. What are we talking about?
Well, I want to talk about the militias or the organization in Minneapolis, and I want to use your experience and pick up on the things you were saying this morning about how they're organized, why you think. Well, just talk about it. I mean, since we were last on camera, it has emerged that the protests in Minneapolis are not just a group of, organic, teachers and moms and citizens just spontaneously getting together, that they're highly organized by third parties, and that they're organized in a way that reminds you of other kind of combat situations or militias with which you have experience.
Well, no. So for those not familiar, there's obviously major riots or activism that is anti-ICE in Minnesota. And recently reporter Cam Higbee infiltrated one of their Signal messenger groups, which is a secure messenger if you're not familiar with it. And it was really, really telling to me, because it really showed me something that should get everyone's attention and kind of take these people seriously, as foolish as they might seem. They're practicing really high level logistics. Okay, so I'll get the quote wrong, but basically, there's an old saying that says, in war, amateurs practice combat tactics and professionals practice logistics.
What does that mean?
So we'll get into that. But it goes deeper than that. There's also a military structure to this entire thing. So what Cam Higbee's Signal thing revealed were a few things, mainly the command and control structure. So what you have there, their command and control structure is essentially, they have, I forgot what you call them. We used to break these down in signals intelligence, but basically an op center or like a dispatch. They're assigning small groups to quadrants of the city for patrol.
Wow.
They have mobile units and foot units.
What do you mean by mobile units? In cars?
In cars.
Wow.
They're coordinated. They keep in constant coordination via their cell phones. So I can't pull it up on Naomi's computer, but as you watch it, you'll see they're saying, hey, Greg 105, this is Lucy 102. And I should add, they're using proper communication protocols.
Ooh, what do you mean by that?
Meaning using their call sign when they start a message.
What's
so if your call sign would be Naomi,
okay,
something that identifies you. So if your call sign was Naomi, you wouldn't just say, hey, I'm heading towards West Thatcher Street. You'd say, you might say, Brian 1, this is Naomi 1, how copy? And I'd say, 5 by 5 or all clear. And then you'd say, I'm heading towards Thatcher Street 1, how copy? And I'm like, I got you. Do you need support? Yeah, head on over there. Yeah, and Frogs 3 and 5 are here too. Be aware they're on foot.
Wow.
And so they're using, these things aren't hard to learn, because as we've seen, this Alex Preddy was, he was a National Guardsman. There was a former intelligence analyst from the military that was arrested. She's been an activist in DC. Wow. There's a lot of military intelligence analysts, but everyone in the military learns these basic communications protocols, the basic elements of military structure, for instance, that they're employing, which goes beyond just good logistics. It's like they have a whole structure. So S1, I'll explain these. S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, S6, S7. These are staff components, I believe they call them. So S1 would be administrative support, getting people signed up, coordinating the rosters. S2 would be intelligence operations. So when they have people out there spying, or they have people at the hotel when James O'Keefe was there, hanging out in every lobby in every hotel.
Wow.
That would be your intelligence component. They're doing tactical intelligence, where they somehow have access to the state database for license plates. And so they can call out actionable intelligence while they're on the move. They're calling in license plates.
How do you define actionable intelligence?
Something you can act on right away. So they are the activists are following people. They're like, hey, I need a pull on M79698, a license plate number. And within minutes or seconds, they're coming back with, yeah, that's a non-ICE vehicle, you know. And then they even identified one vehicle as Cam Higby's vehicle.
Oh my gosh.
Now it's unclear if they have access to the database or if they've just been collecting. I know they've been collecting license plates at every single rally. Part of me feels that all of these No Kings rallies, all of these anti-ICE rallies, you hear them all across the country. They're like, get the license plate, get the license plate.
Right.
And that seems to have fed into a central developer.
Oh my God.
And this database is available to activists all over the country. And I'm saying activists, I'm being charitable, just for the ease of, explaining this. But they're, the fact that they have these different, so they have the S2, the intelligence, the S3, which is operations. That's like doing the action on the ground, infantry, that's conducting the war. S4 is your logistics component. They have people designated as logistics. And then they also have community support. So you're going to get into your S5, like I think it's civil affairs. And then when you get as high as S7, that's when you're getting into that's civil affairs and information operations.
Wow.
So that's the part of the military that coordinates with like media to keep messaging in sync. And then the G that I mentioned, that would be general or like general staff level. So what I just described as S's, that's at the tactical level, meaning, if we had 20 activists, we'd be the S,
right.
In that level, just like a squad in the infantry is, they're operating under, that the kind of S level. Then at the general staff level, you're talking like Pentagon type operations, that sort of thing, where they do the strategic planning.
Right.
And then they have J, which is the joint operations. That would be these same components at a joint level where there's multiple components of the military, Army,
And
Navy, Marines.
You're saying that this organic, these signal groups have all of those military type structures?
Loosely, yeah. I mean, not exactly, but pretty darn close.
So,
I mean,
sorry to interrupt. But what's the headline? Like
the headline is "Beware they're practicing logistics," and then maybe subheadline would be "As professional soldiers would." If they were just out there throwing rocks and holding up signs, that'd be less alarming for me. The fact that they have cordoned off the city into quadrants and assign patrols.
Oh my God.
And then in the signal chat, they'll have like a person, they'll have the icon of the person sprinting. That means foot patrol.
Oh my goodness.
They have different symbols that mean different things.
So you're saying, these are comments from the Bible. They're not comments for this discussion yet. They're just people saying nice things.
Oh, that is nice. You don't look 63 at all. Well, thanks, man. I'm not 63. I appreciate that anyways. I think I probably look 63. That's nice.
Yeah.
So you had another question.
Well, yeah, you say they, and you've described a really scary reality that what is being messaged as just concerned citizens who care about their neighbors is really a paramilitary or quasi-military operation.
I call it paramilitary.
Paramilitary. Sure. You say they. Who is they? I know you've done a lot of work tracing the money for these groups, but who are they?
The names are kind of fungible. The organizations change all the time. It's the same people that kind of conform to a neo-socialist, neo-communist ideal. These organizations are things like Indivisible, for instance. That would be your, I would even say like G1 level. Like they're big coordinators. Indivisible, they are linked in with an app called Mobilize with a Z.us, where they plan all their rallies.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, Indivisible, they organized the Tesla torchings.
Right.
They organized the No Kings.
Right.
And I think the guy's name is Ezra Levine is in charge of that outfit. He's the one that was trying to look like the left-wing Steve Bannon because he wore a bomber jacket, I guess. But the thing is, they are highly organized. Now, how did they get so effective? Now, a lot of people will say, how do they get out there so quickly? Well, there's a couple answers to that. The No Kings rallies, which had no agenda, I believe, my opinion, based on my research and going to these rallies, because no one really seemed to know why they were there. That's just practice.
Wow.
What they've done with this is a big socialist communist movement. Right. This is not Democrats per se.
Although Indivisible messages itself as just Democrats.
Of course, because they're not going to say we're communists.
No, indeed.
So what's happening right now is, and it's happened quicker than I thought it would, there's a battle in this country for control of this country through the political parties. And so on the left, there's the DNC, Democrats, who have been infiltrated and are slowly, and it seems almost completely now, being taken over by socialists, real socialists, not champagne socialists. Right. And that's what the DSA is, the Democratic Socialists of America. And then they have branches in many different names. That's why I said the names are kind of fungible. There's the Working Party's family, Working Family Party. There's so many. I mean, just look at the signs at all these rallies. If they're near you or you see it on TV, you will see a dozen hammers and sickles. Wow. You'll see a bunch of socialists this and socialists that, and the socialist chipmunk warriors of, Aroostook County, and so, and they keep it cute on purpose, and they keep the smiley faces on purpose, because that's what communists do. Right. They're not going to come. They don't come to your door yet, dressed like, a bunch of Russian soldiers. Right. They come to your town board meetings. They take over your zoning boards. We're seeing that in Salem, Massachusetts. The DSA, evidence that the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, have gained vast power is huge. Evidence is everywhere. Mom Dami is a great example. Right. The Squad are all DSA.
Are they really?
They're all DSA. Wow. That guy Fetta over there in Minneapolis is that Somali that I think he starred in that Captain Phillips movie. Right.
Stop.
He looks just like him. He's DSA. A lot of people you'll see, anytime you see a congressperson or like a candidate speaking out on anything Trump does, even if it's good, especially if it's Venezuela, just check their profile. You're going to find that they're backed by DSA. DSA is not a political party. They're trying to be. Right now, they're like a kind of a loose pack, but they raise tons of money, and they're aligned with, and they have they formed a pack when Mandami was running with CARE, which is the Council on Islamic Relations. Right. CARE has been directly associated through the court case of the Holy Land suit with the Muslim Brotherhood, which goes back to the early 1900s.
But this is the weird part, honey. Like, this has been called the Red-Green Alliance. How could ideologies as opposite as Islamic extremism and, red Marxist communism have any alignment with each other? They want completely different outcomes in the world.
They do, and there can be only one. And, I think the communists know that better than the Islamists do. But I would say, don't look at their differences, look at their similarities. What do they have in common? Unlike the Catholic Church, where we have a pope at the top and a real, a chain of command, so to speak. Islam really doesn't have that. Yes, they have imams that run, the mosques and everything like that, but there's no real big chain of command there, after Muhammad. So you have kind of a lateral type structure. They also appeal to the working class. Like, for instance, if you go to Saudi Arabia, where I've been, or Yemen, where I've been to many countries in the Middle East in my service and in the intelligence world, you'll find that countries like Jordan, parts of Saudi Arabia, Yemen, for sure, these are all kind of provincial working class people for the most part. They're, I want to say, devout Islamists, but they get behind it as quickly as non-practicing Christians get behind Christianity when the enemy is at their gates in their mind.
Right.
I could talk to a million Islamists, and I probably know more about Islam than they do. But the point is, they get behind it and they get whipped up. It gives them something to rally behind is Islam. So it's the same thing with the communists. They get behind anti-imperialism.
Right.
That's the battle cry.
Right.
And so they both agree that the imperialist West forces are their greatest enemy. That's where they agree.
But how do they think this will all work out? I mean, who's going to say they conquer, Western capitalism once and for all, and, the infidels and the capitalists and all their enemies? Who's going to take power? I mean, the Marxists are godless, and the Islamic extremists are fundamentalist religious fanatics, and the fundamentalists don't like and penalize gay people, and the Marxists don't care, and the Marxists are about equal rights for women, and the fundamentalist Islamists want to put women back in the Middle Ages. Little piece of
So how does this work out? Well, I can't think of them off the top of my head because this was impromptu, but I was researching that very question. How will this work out? Has this happened before in history? Yes, it has.
Has it really?
Oh yeah. I mean, think of some of the groups in Russia that are Muslim.
Right.
Think about Serbia.
Right.
They leveraged the Muslims to really commit a lot of atrocities against Muslims.
Wow.
So it's happened before. What usually happens is the Marxists and the communists are in charge at the end of the day, and they just slowly take out the leaders, the more charismatic leaders of the Islamic factions. Back then they just killed them, but today it would be jail, sex scandal, because we have state level sponsorship of this whole thing.
Right.
We have like Tim Waltz and Mayor Fry who are openly backing these protests, as an example.
Right. So let's now go project a little bit into the future. We've had 2 fatalities. Two people got shot in Minnesota just in the last couple of weeks in these protests and clashes with ICE. How do you project what's going to happen in the next few weeks if nothing changes? Is ICE going to win? Are the Marxists going to win?
Well, look, the government, the more well-armed, well-funded force always wins. It's a war of attrition. I think first and foremost, I always tell people, before you worry about that, peek around your own communities, get on Mobilize and just type in ICE rally or protest in your zip code and see what's coming your way. So you're prepared for that. You don't want to be heading down to Jamboree with your kids and get caught in some violent riot. So you want to be, if you're not going to counter protest, at least be aware of what to avoid. That said, what I believe is going to happen is what's happening now.
What do you mean?
In Minnesota, the way this is going to play out with ICE and the protesters. That was your question. Yeah. What will happen is, we recently saw that Trump did what looked like a bit of a slight capitulation. I think some people are describing it that way, where he had a call with Fry and Walls, and then pulled back Bovino, the commander there, and I think he kind of sidelined Noam in terms of like the PR or the civil affairs type role, but he brought in Homan. I mean, so the thing is, you take out Bovino, that's like taking out Captain Smith, and you bring in Homan, that's like putting in Patton. So that means by putting Homan on the ground, that means Trump's very serious about finishing this mission and having mission success. If they are smart about it, I know Homan is a genius at tactics and removals. He's been at it for a long time. He was even awarded a medal by Obama. Wow. But they're going to, I think what happened the other day was there was a phone call. I believe President Trump, and I'm just guessing here, but just based on past performance, I think President Trump probably said, all right, guys, look, we're not going away. Right. More people are going to get killed. I don't have to get reelected. I don't care. We're probably losing the midterm. So me, I'll go all in. Right. Look at Venezuela. Okay. By the way, do you like my new sound equipment that I blasted your protesters with? That was nice, huh? And then Walls and Fry probably said, okay, but we can't show weakness because then they'll turn on us,
Right.
or they'll turn on each other, and we'll have chaos. And I think what President Trump did was say, okay, why don't we pull back Bovino, and we'll make it look like that was out of pressure from the protesters. That'll give them their pound of flesh, sate them for a little while. And then in return for that, you guys give me the state police.
Right.
Which they did.
Yeah.
And so state police are making arrests in Minnesota now. What will happen in the next few weeks, the operation is going to continue. It's just, I think they're going to switch from a more shock and awe campaign, which this started as, big guys and or, fit people with tactical vests and masks. It's very scary. And I think that was the intent. Also, the masks were there to protect those ICE agents' identities, because we've seen what happens. Okay. But what will happen is they're going to integrate, they're going to kind of slip into the society, and they're going to start doing things at night without the cameras rolling. They don't need the shock and awe anymore. And they're just going to be getting them out. And the protesters, who are very effective at detecting these operations, they're not going to have the support of the state police anymore. They might have the local police, but they're not going to have the state police anymore. And I think the National Guard will probably stand down. And once there's a big amount of the population shipped out, the illegals, these protests die. I mean, these protests last, 4 or 5 weeks at best. So that's what I think is the play here. We'll see what happens.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, as my grandmother would say. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
Am I leaving?
No, you don't have to. But I have to say goodbye.
I'll say goodbye. By the way, gold, you mentioned. Do you know it hit 53 today because of Trump tariffs and uncertainty? And I don't know, if you guys want to play the gold market the right way, get in it now and watch what Trump says. If he says something that is scary to the left, buy more gold.
Wow.
Because gold seems to spike every time he does. 5,300.
5,300 an ounce? Is that what you're saying?
Broke through 5,300 today.
Unbelievable. Well, what do 3 billionaires, 4 major banks, and a legendary 72-year-old investor all have in common? They're all making the same shocking prediction, picking up where you were going. Gold is headed for $10,000 an ounce or more. Goldman Sachs says gold will surge 20%. JP Morgan says 25%. And one respected economist now believes the U.S. government could deliberately raise gold's official price to help pay off the national debt. The world's wealthiest players are already making their moves, and now you can see exactly what they're seeing for free. Our friends at American Alternative Assets just released a powerful new report, The Surprising Case for $10,000 Gold. It breaks down the hidden signals, what's going on geopolitically, and all the kind of tea leaves that the wealthiest and most successful investors are reading in order to explain how you can invest in gold. And as I often say, you and I first started talking about buying gold 5 years ago.
It was like 1,014
at that time. Yeah. And if we had done that, we would have quintupled our investment. So we're not making that same mistake again of sitting it out. Silver too, that's right, on the march. So head over to American Alternative Assets. You have to take a look at this. They'll give you that free guide. Go to cloutgold.com. You can download it for free, or call 855-803-GOLD. 855-803-GOLD. Don't wait, you guys. The window is closing fast.
That's a good comment right there.
What, Barry Atkinson's?
Yeah.
So Barry, our good friend, says in 1966, Mao Zedong asked, how is the student revolution going in the U.S.? It's all an intervention and expansion of Chinese political funding.
He's right. And in Peter Schweitzer's new book called Invisible Coup, which I highly recommend, he's talking about all these invasions, weaponizing of immigration and illegal immigration. It was Deng Xiaoping, who was the guy under Carter, the Chinese leader.
Maybe I don't.
But basically, Carter was giving the Chinese leader crap about the human rights violations, and Deng Xiaoping, I think his name, said, well, then how many of our Chinese do you want? 1 million, 2 million. It was like it was an overt threat.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much, Daniel Hoffman. I'm getting a lot of compliments. So
right.
Remember, it's the supplements.
Right, simmer down, Daniel. She's taken.
It's the pine cones, everyone. It's the pine cones. All right. Well, honey, thank you for spelling out the revolution in our cities in America. I never thought this day would come. I also did. Thank God we've got people like you who can help explain to us what's happening and how to head it off at the pass. I love that Loki just goes into kind of a love coma in your arms, even when you're talking about.
And look, I got to give a shout out to OMG Media, these guys on the ground, Nick Shirley, who really kind of got this whole ball rolling, and Cam Higby. I mean, these guys, and Nick Sorter, how can I forget him? We follow each other, all these guys. And, they're out there every single day. So I would say definitely follow their work, follow ours, of course, too. But, we're here in New York. They're there getting ice bottles thrown at their heads. So,
real journalism, not New York
Times,
thank you
to
not
all
Wall
of
Street
them.
Journal. Thank you to the citizen journalists. And of course, you get the journalism that you support. As I always say, if you want this kind of analysis without fear or favor, take some resources, you guys. So please go over to Daily Clout and you can subscribe or make a donation there. It's Liberty Stories from around the world, but it's also BillCam, which lets you follow any state or federal bill and actually change legislation from your phone, and Legisector, which lets you drill down into bills in your own industry, or go over to Substack, and my Substack is Outspoken, and you can subscribe there. We have 112,000 readers, many fewer paid subscribers. There's no paywall. So if you want to support my journalism, please go over and become a paid subscriber. If you can't afford to, go ahead and read it. And honey, where do they find you?
You can find me on X at Brian O'Shea SPI, and also at Consumer DD, which is Consumer Diligence, a free resource where you could check out all the places you might want to shop at, like online pharmacies and everything. We do a deep dive that's like Consumer Reports with fangs. So check it out. And a big shout out to my good buddy, Dallas Ludlam, who's also my senior editor.
Awesome. All right, you guys, we'll see you soon. And thank you for joining us. Take care.